Hello, my name is Cora Georgiou, and I'm a game designer on the initial design team.
Hi, I'm Edward Goodwin. I'm an associate game designer on the final design team.
So take a moment to talk about the new expansion. What can players expect to see out of Voyage to the Sunken City?
Yes, so this is our first expansion of the year. It's going to be the first expansion after the rotation, where we're going to be seeing quite a few popular cards leaving. So we knew we had to make some heavy hitters here, and I think we've done this theme justice. So like, as you said, this is Voyage to the Sunken City, and we are going to be venturing to the bottom of the sea, and we are going to be meeting the Naga minion type for the first time. Now, we've had Naga in Hearthstone in the past, even going back as far as Classic with like Dark Scale Healer, but this is the first time that Naga are going to be acknowledged as their own minion type, and the first time that we are giving them some synergies as a minion type. So you're going to be seeing them as a spell casting minion type that care about having cast spells while they're in your hand, and you're going to be seeing some spells on the flip side that care if you've played a Naga while they were held in your hand. We've got some really iconic characters, of course, with this theme, being Nazjatar, post Great Sundering, that I think you're going to really enjoy seeing some of these familiar faces. And Edward, I'll go ahead and toss it over to you to talk about some of the other things we'll see.
I think alongside the Naga, there's a lot of other creatures that inhabit the bottom of the ocean, and one that I would love to talk about are these colossal minions. So just to preface this, I think colossal might be the best keyword that Hearthstone has ever done outside of maybe Discover. Colossal minions are minions that whenever they're summoned, so if they're summoned from your deck, or you play them from hand, or even transformed into, they spawn their appendages. And these are limbs of the creature that will play off the main body in really interesting ways. I think if you look at WAAAGH, for instance, is immune while his shell is intact. WAAAGH will increase the damage of his eyes, and his eyes will deal extra damage at the end of your turn. You'll see a lot of colossal minions that kind of follow that recipe of having appendages that play off the main body, and I think they're really cool.
So we've seen Hearthstone go across Azeroth into the skies, into the caverns, underground and all around, but what made you guys want to go under the sea this time around?
This is a setting that we've wanted to do for a long time. Every time we do a brainstorm session as a team, when we come together, brainstorming for what the new expansion theme should be, this is always one that had been tossed up on the board and was pretty high up. So we thought that coming off of, a year-long narrative following all of our mercenaries, that it was a good time to explore something, an expansion that was maybe a little bit more akin to like Journey to Ungoro, which was very environment-based, very location-based, rather than character-based. So we do have some really wonderful characters in this set, of course, but for the most part, we really wanted to explore, what does the bottom of the sea look like? What do mechanics look like when they're underwater? What do creatures look like that are underwater? We'd had some concept art done a while back, I believe, by one of our artists, Charlene, I think just as part of her Free Your Mind project. And those concepts were so cool that we just sort of kept going back to them. And we finally said, you know what? It's a brand new year. Now's the time. And so we finally just said, we're going to do it.
Edward, to elaborate on the colossal minions, did you take inspiration from other games with similar mechanics? I know the Transformers card game, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh, had like kind of a build mechanic. If you summon 5 cards, they would form a gigantic robot.
We all think of Exodia.
So I really, the inspiration here actually came from the setting that we were exploring. I think it was mostly from initial design, just like how do we ideate on what does it mean to be a giant sea creature at the bottom of the sea? Because when you make an underwater expansion, you can't miss out on the giant sea creatures, right? So really, it just came from a lot of hard work, a lot of different ways to represent that, and it was all in-house. I think the initial design team came up with a really wonderful mechanic, and when we saw it for the first time on final design, I was like, wow, we need to make sure that we do this justice. I'm really excited to get this into players' hands.
Yeah, it was largely a lot of exploration of obviously what creatures inhabit, the bottom of the ocean alongside the Naga. And then, how do we represent our explorers who are sort of coming into their territory for the first time, and they're bringing, mechanical marvels alongside them. So you have really the technological sort of dichotomy with the natural worlds of Zin-Azshari and Nazjatar, which was really cool to explore.
So there are certain minion types in Hearthstone that we associate with a class. Like with beasts, they're typical to hunter and druid. With pirates, we think about warrior and rogue. With demons, we think about warlock and demon hunter. So what classes are players likely to associate with the Naga?
I could take that one. Naga are going to appear in a lot of classes this time around. I think we are designing these as the forefront minion type for this expansion, so you're going to see them in quite a few classes. And really, what's great about them compared to a lot of other minion types that we've done in the past is that minion types like Murlocs often care about just jamming a bunch of Murlocs, right? If you play Murloc Shaman, you're trying to play your 1-drop Murloc and 2-drop Murloc, and basically just play as many as possible. The way that we've designed Naga in this expansion is they're very spell focused. So a lot of them will power up if you played a spell while they're in your hand, like Cora mentioned. There will be spells that power up when you play a Naga. And what I love about this play style is that we reward you for weaving spell Naga, and we can do that in a bunch of different classes. It's not really tied to any single individual class. I think it's going to be a really fun new play style.
Yeah, I think rather than the question of which classes get to use Naga, it's how do the different classes use Naga in different ways. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the spell casting. Some classes like Mage and Priest really love spell flurry archetypes where they cast a lot of spells at the same time, Rogue as well. Other classes care about casting bigger spells or casting more impactful spells. And so creating Naga that work in various types of conditions and various archetypes, that was pretty cool because, of course, we want everybody to have access to the new minion type in a new expansion. We want everybody to be able to play it. It's just a matter of how they play it.
So you've talked about things that the team has had in mind for like a long time now. So that leads me to the dredge keyword, and I'm sure it's been in the back of everyone's minds for a while. But like, what made you want to go finally introduce this mechanic where you can kind of rummage through the bottom of your deck to find that card you're looking for?
Yeah, this one's cool. We sort of, when we come into a new expansion and we do very broad mechanic exploration for like 3 or 4 weeks right at the beginning, a lot of it is, throwing everything at the wall and trying everything and iterating on everything and seeing what sticks. And we've done quite a few combat keywords in the past year with Frenzy, with Honorable Kill. But we also had one sort of consistency, deck manipulation isn't quite the right word for it, keyword with Tradable. And Tradable is a huge hit. People absolutely love being able to craft their game plan, in a way that suits them with these cards that allow them to sort of pull things out of their deck at a cost, of course. And Dredge is, I guess, another way for us to kind of do that. In hindsight, or I guess in a bubble, the bottom of your deck might seem like a very small portion of cards. But then we introduce things like the Sunken cycle, which allow you to manipulate what you put at the bottom of your deck to pull it up to the top of your deck. And anytime you're able to really curate what card you're going to draw for the next turn, you're able to plan out your game plan, you're able to really craft that game plan. I think that is something that competitive players are really, really going to love.
From there, I got to ask a little bit more about Colossal. Like how is it going to work in terms of like how many appendages each of these colossal minions has? Is it going to vary? Like, are we going to see something like a giant golem with like two arms, or are we going to see something like a giant squid where it has like maybe 6 tentacles or something like that? Like, how is that going to work?
So there's going to be all sorts of creatures that appear as colossal minions. And yes, to answer your question, they are going to vary in the amount of appendages that they have. Like even WAAAGH versus WAAAGH, for instance, WAAAGH has 4 appendages while WAAAGH has 1. One important call out here is that all appendages will work the same for a single colossal minion. So there won't be any surprises of like coming in with hands and legs. WAAAGH, for instance, has 4 of the same ice stock. And that will stay consistent among colossal minions.
And what are some of the new deck archetypes that you expect to see come out of the new expansion? And I realize this may be a bit of a challenge to answer, not just considering that it's the start of a new standard year, but you haven't revealed all the cards yet. But if you had, from what we've seen so far, what do you expect to see shape the meta in the future?
Good question. Obviously, there's a lot that we can't talk about, but I will point to one card that you should have been able to see, and that's the Azharan Sweeper. which puts the Sunken Sweeper on the bottom of your deck, and that is a mage mech card. And then the Sunken Sweeper says, Battlecry, add 3 random mechs to your hand. So, it would be silly if we just made a single mech card for mage and then they didn't have any other mechs to go along with it. I think mech mage is something that players have really enjoyed all the way going back to, Goblins vs. Gnomes. So being able to explore that again in a different way was really cool because it's just such a classic Hearthstone archetype.
That's so interesting considering you're just coming off Dragons with the most recent mini set, and now going from Dragons to mechs should be a really interesting, kind of a swing. Okay, so I guess lastly for me, so the standard years over the past couple of years have always had kind of a theme to them, like something that ties them all together. So how will Voyage to the Sunken City tie into the rest of this specific standard year?
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think one of the learnings that we had over the past year was we've been a bit over on the from hand combo style decks, and I think going into this year, something that we really want to hit on is, Hearthstone is a very board-based game. I think that is one of our overarching goals for this upcoming year, and I think Voyage to Sunken City is definitely going to hit on that. We have a lot of board-based archetypes coming up. Colossal minions are entirely about board, but I think that would be one way that Voyage to Sunken City really hits home on that overarching goal for this year.
Yeah, I think when you do a year that is 3 completely separate stories that we're telling, essentially, our 3 expansions are not linked, it can be difficult to, like Edward say, find those overarching goals. So it's important that we come into it with these goals that we have in mind, especially with the new core set that sort of sets the tone for what we want to create over the course of the year. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Board-based strategies are something that we want to incentivize. We want to make minions matter. And that's sort of something that we're starting here.
So you said the magical word, story. So obviously there's a lot of history in Zin-Azshari and the Naga with Illidan and Kill the Lost. And what kind of little Easter eggs will we see if we play a Naga minion and we're playing a demon hunter? Do you have any fun little things we'll notice in the history of Warcraft?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely correct. There's a lot of story, 10,000 years of story involved in the narrative that we're trying to tell here. And while I don't want to give anything away, I do think a lot of the iconic characters, the Naga specifically, that you would expect to see, we've been able to capture that. And it's, something, whereas in Hearthstone, we obviously want to ground ourselves in World of Warcraft lore when we can, and we want to ground ourselves in these experiences that our players have, that they've played through these stories. They know a lot of these characters. And then we also like to introduce characters that are specific to Hearthstone as well, like Ambassador Phelan, for instance. And, sort of being able to put the Hearthstone spin on the World of Warcraft lore is what we love to do. But I don't think you'll be disappointed when it comes to seeing that lore represented here.
Then just as a fun bonus question, is there any chance you guys will ever bring back the I'm sorry emote in Hearthstone? I miss that so much. I miss it so much. I miss it. You don't even know how much I miss it.
Okay, no plans at this time, but I will say we, for whatever reason, we do still record I'm sorry voice lines for hero skins when we make them. So, and I just want to make this very clear, no plans at this time. Don't get,
just do
too
it for
excited.
the Mayor Noggin players.
But for whatever reason, we do still do it.
Better safe than sorry, I guess. It's an option
case,
down the road.
Just in case the opportunity ever arises, but I don't know that it will.
All this to say, I'm sorry, Greg.